right, welcome back to you guys. Nice to see all of you guys. Welcome to our class. I'm going to be sharing with you this topic of what is Kamma and how does it affect me after our meditation. We're going to do that first to get you guys started. Then we're going to take our mid-morning break, and then we're going to come back and learn what is merit and continued support on the path to enlightenment, how to continue to gain more and more support, because our course is kind of coming to an end slowly. And then this afternoon, we have a special activity. I'll kind of talk about the field trip, give you guys details on that, and then we'll talk about the activity that we do on Thursday afternoon. And then, of course, tomorrow we have our tour that we're going to go outside the city. So welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone who's online as well. If you'd like to join with the meditation, I think you guys know I start with the chanting, then I'm going to come in with the guidance, then there'll be a period of time where it's just quiet, then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. So you guys are welcome to join in if you like. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakatoro Kawitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you'd like to just establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวาพุทธังมะคะวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to all of you. Welcome to everyone online as well who's joining us. Today is the 4th day of our 5-day course. And at the beginning of this course and throughout the course, I've been teaching you guys that in terms of your meditation practice, it's important to build this up to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. And that might sound like a lot to some people, but there's probably certain unbeneficial things that you're doing in your life that if you cleared those things out, you would actually have more time to actually do meditation. And you're going to need that as part of your journey to enlightenment. So what I do is I kind of help to build students up in all aspects of this path, but particularly with meditation as well, is building up to 30-minute session. And I'd like to let you know that this was a 30-minute meditation session. So if you were here meditating that entire time, you kind of have a gauge of what it feels like to meditate for 30 minutes. And maybe you felt like, wow, that was really quick. That was really short. Okay, great. You can see that you're at a 30-minute mark and you would like to aim to continue to meditate at that point. If it was like, wow, that was really quite a stretch for me, then you know that you just have some more room to grow. Or if you felt like, wow, that was just right, it was just perfect to meditate that amount of time, then you know that as well. So this was a 30-minute session, and you would like to continue to grow this. If you are, at 10 minutes or 12 minutes or 15 minutes, you would like to continue to grow to 30 minutes. You really don't need much more than 30 minutes meditation per session. I can probably count on one hand, maybe two, how many times I've meditated 45 minutes to an hour. You really don't need that much. That oftentimes when you go away to these retreats, you're meditating for 6 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, however long, and you can actually get burned out on it. And if you're doing meditation the way that the Buddha taught, it's impossible to meditate for that length of time. It's kind of like if you went to the gym and you were working out and you kind of were talking on your phone in between sets and you're watching TV and you're chatting with all the people at the gym. Yeah, you can be there for 6 or 8 hours, but you're not really necessarily getting a better workout just because you were there for 6 to 8 hours. And it's the same thing with meditation, that with meditation, if you're just extending your meditation session just for the sake of extending it, you're not necessarily getting better meditation. And just like the gym, you can go in there and you can do 30 minutes, 45-minute workout and be out the door and on with your day and all the other amazing things that you'd like to do. It's the same thing with meditation, is you can be doing your meditation 30 minutes and then be on and off to doing all the other wonderful things you'd like to do in your day. So what you would like to do is gradually build this up to the point where you're meditating 2 to 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. When you get up to 2 meditation sessions, that's where you're really going to see a big impact. And if you can get 3 per day, you're going to see significant impact there. If it's a matter of 1 meditation for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, you're going to notice the 2 for 15 are much more impactful than the 1 for 30 minutes. And then just take that 15 minutes and gradually expand it more and more in your day-to-day life. And that's where you'll see the real benefits in your meditation. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this topic with you about the natural law of Kamma. And you guys are going to be able to ask questions as we go. Just like always, you guys can use the microphones here or anybody online. You guys are welcome to ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any questions that you like. When we talk about this path to enlightenment and we talk about awakening to enlightenment, what we're talking about is cultivation of wisdom. You need to be able to cultivate wisdom about the natural laws, and that's what's going to awaken the mind. When we talk about the mind sleeping, that it means that it's unknowing of true reality. It has this lack of wisdom of the natural laws and how the world truly functions in terms of these natural laws. So when you're awakening the mind, then you're cultivating wisdom about these natural laws. There's multiple natural laws that the Buddha taught about, but the main primary natural law is this natural law of Kamma. So we could say everything the Buddha taught in one way or another comes back to this natural law. Now, some people refer to this as karma. You might have heard that word. That's a Sanskrit version. It's just a different language, but it's pointing to the same natural law. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, so people who study his original teachings will tend to use this word Kamma. If it translated to just one English word, I would just use that word because it'd be easier for everyone, but there's still 2 words in the Pali language that I still need to use in order to be able to share with you the teachings of the Buddha, because it doesn't translate to just one English word. It's this word Kamma, and then there's another word. It's called jhana. This is the 2 Pali words that I still need to use, but I always define what these are so that you'll understand them. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to help you understand the 4 types of Kamma, and then I'm going to help you to understand how to extinguish your unwholesome Kamma, because there's certain unwholesome Kamma that you've created that you need to actually extinguish in order to make your way to enlightenment. Now, sometimes when people think about what they're experiencing in day-to-day life, they tend to think about good luck or bad luck, or destiny or fate, or maybe it's God or some entity called the universe, or maybe it's other people that's determining what you experience on a day-to-day basis. Oftentimes when you're experiencing unwholesome results, you might actually blame it on these kinds of things, that it's good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate, or maybe it's God or the universe, or maybe it's other people that are causing the things that you experience. As long as you subscribe yourself to this type of thinking, you'll never be able to transform any aspect of your life, because you can't change any of those kinds of things. You can't change good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate or God or some being called the universe, and you can't change other people. So essentially you're locked in if you subscribe to that type of thinking. But what you can see through the natural law of Kamma is that it's actually your decisions that are leading to any particular thing that you experience. But again, because of the lack of wisdom, the mind will tend to blame what you experience on other people. When we experience wholesome things in the unenlightened state, we'll be like, yeah, that was me. I'm the one who did all that stuff. I'm the one who accomplished all those things. But then when it comes to unwholesome things, people tend to blame it on other people. And you can't have it both ways, right? You can't in one situation say it's all because of me that these wholesome things happen. But then when all these unwholesome things are happening, oh, that's because of something else. So you need to be able to see true reality, that it's your decisions that are leading to any particular result. And I'm going to help you to be able to see that with the natural law of Kamma. And perhaps if you've been studying in this course from the beginning, you're already starting to see some of that. Because if there's anything that you don't particularly care for that's going on in your day-to-day life, all you need to do is to cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and then you will experience different results. But if it's good luck, bad luck, destiny, fate, God, or some entity called the universe, or other people that are causing what you experience, you can't change anything. So that's not the way that the world is truly working. So if there's anything that you don't particularly care for that's going on in your day-to-day life, just cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. And this is how you get to improvement in your day-to-day life. So I'm going to help you to understand this topic of what is Kamma and how does it affect me. So first, just kind of talking about this natural law in general, is that it's a natural law that exists and is functioning at all times. Whether you're aware of this natural law or not, you're actually being affected by it. And everything the Buddha taught in one way or another is coming back to this natural law. What this word Kamma means is it means cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. That's what Kamma is. When you make decisions wisely or unwisely, you're going to experience either wholesome Kamma or wholesome results, or you're going to experience unwholesome results or unwholesome Kamma. Everybody is being affected by this, every single being, whether they're aware of this natural law or not. So the more that you understand this natural law, the better. There's no being or entity that is overseeing the functioning of this natural law. It just happens as a result of your intentions, your speech, and your actions. Any decisions that you're making, it's going to produce a certain result. Whenever you put a decision out into the world, there's going to be a result. And if it's wise, you'll experience wholesome Kamma. Or if it's unwise, you'll experience unwholesome Kamma. It's not a system of punishments and rewards. This is how sometimes people look at it, particularly if you're coming from some other tradition. They might think it's punishments and rewards, or who's to blame or who's at fault. That's not what the natural law of Kamma is. Essentially, it's a sequence of events that as you're making decisions, there's going to be a certain sequence that when this occurs, when this decision is made, there's going to be this effect or this result. And the more wisdom you have that produces wholesome results, you'll make wiser and wiser decisions. It's kind of like when we were young kids, maybe we walked down the beach and we were kicking up sand up into the air and it kept blowing back in our face. Well, it was our decision, right? It was our decision that led to that. And what we learned is like, maybe I should stop kicking sand up into the air. And then when you stop kicking sand up into the air, it's like, wow, it's so much more enjoyable to walk on the beach when there's not sand blowing back in your face. Well, all you had to do was cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. And that's the beauty of this, is that you can see this cause and effect of the natural law of Kamma. That the natural law of Kamma is the most unbiased teacher you will ever find, because it's going to show you at every moment where you're making wise decisions and where you're making unwise decisions. And if you pay attention to this stuff and you don't blame it on good luck, bad luck, destiny, fate, God, or some entity called the universe or other people, you can see whatever it is that you're experiencing in life, it's coming from your decisions, and just figure out the decisions that you're making. And if you're experiencing wholesome results, keep making those kinds of decisions. And if you're experiencing unwholesome results, stop making those kinds of decisions. But we're going to get into a lot more detail than that to be able to help you and guide you in making wise decisions so you can experience more and more wholesome results. So this natural law of Kamma is not punishments and rewards. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault. It's also not anything mystical or magical. I've heard all kinds of things from people over the years. Sometimes people talk about this black cloud that's following them around, and this is their Kamma. Or I've heard people talk about it like a bank account, that you make deposits into this karmic bank account, and if you make enough deposits, then you can make withdrawals and you can start doing unwholesome things as well. This isn't actually true. So you're going to hear all these different kinds of things. Essentially, what the natural law of Kamma is it's this cause and effect, or action and result. It's very simple. There's a decision that's being made, and then there's going to be an effect. And based on how wise that decision is, you're going to either be experiencing wholesome Kamma or wholesome results, or unwholesome Kamma or unwholesome results. So it's the results of your decisions. And it's always important to keep in mind that it's your life, your decisions, and your results. That anything you experience is coming from decisions that you make. And you need to be able to see that more and more clearly so that then you can be empowered. That's the beauty about understanding the natural law of Kamma, is that you are now empowered to create the kind of life that you would like to create. You don't need to be dragged through life. You don't need to drag this being through life where you're just subjected to whatever is happening around you. You can make conscious decisions about your friends, about where you live, about where you work, about how you interact with people. All these different things, you can make conscious decisions about them, and you will create a certain life for yourself. And now you can thoroughly enjoy that life, living the ideal life. So there's 4 different types of Kamma that I'm going to teach you. But first, let me help you to understand just a couple of things with the words of the Buddha. In this book series, there's one particular book that is 100% about the natural law of Kamma, and it's volume 6. It's titled The Natural Law of Kamma. But we could really say this entire book series, all 13 books, is about the natural law of Kamma, because in one way or the other, the teachings of the Buddha are coming back to that. So there's a whole collection of teachings from the Buddha about this natural law. But these are 2 important points about the natural law of Kamma that you need to know at this particular time. And these are the words of the Buddha. He says, beings are the owners of their Kamma, the heirs of their Kamma. They have Kamma as their origin, Kamma as their relative, Kamma as their resort. Whatever Kamma they do, wholesome or unwholesome, they are its heirs. What he's saying here is you're the only one that can produce Kamma for yourself. It's not other people that are producing it for you. Because sometimes you can be around people and they're like, oh, don't rub your bad Kamma off on me. Well, it's not possible for that to occur. Or if someone's like, here, let me give you some wholesome Kamma. Let me give you some good Kamma. It's not possible for other people to do that, and you can't do that for other people either. So you can see it here where the Buddha is saying that you are the one who is creating Kamma for yourself. Then he says here, the results of Kamma, I say, is threefold, to be experienced in this very life, in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. Now, I know some of you guys haven't had the opportunity to independently verify the cycle of rebirth, but this is something that you can independently verify. Right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, but I can assure you, you have multiple lives. You've already had multiple lives, and you'll continue to have multiple lives if one doesn't get to enlightenment. In volume 11, chapter 105, I have 17 different criteria of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But it's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because it's not something you usually approach when you first get started on the path to enlightenment in a course like this, a foundational course. But understand that you do have multiple lives. And what the Buddha is saying here is that any Kamma you create, you are going to experience either it in this life, the next rebirth, or on some future life after that. So what he's saying is you can't run and hide from your Kamma. Whatever you produce as Kamma, you're going to experience that. So these are 2 very important points to understand, is that it's only you that is creating your Kamma, and you can't run and hide from it. And when you understand that, it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, let me learn as much about this natural law as possible so that I can now extinguish all my unwholesome Kamma. Because that's what you're doing on the path to enlightenment, is getting to a point where you're only experiencing wholesome Kamma. By the time you get to enlightenment, everything that's happening for you is only wholesome. There's no unwholesome Kamma whatsoever. So here, the 4 types of Kamma: wholesome and unwholesome, old Kamma and new Kamma. First, let's talk about wholesome and unwholesome Kamma. Wholesome Kamma is produced whenever you're making harmless decisions. When you're making harmless decisions, you will experience wholesome results because you're not causing harm to any beings. And then when you're making harmful decisions, you will experience unwholesome kamma, or unwholesome results. So for example, right now you're just sitting here in a classroom listening to me talk. You're not causing any harm to any beings, and that's why no harm is coming to you, right? Because you're making harmless decisions, right? But conversely, if you were poking the person in the eyes that's sitting next to you, now you're causing harm, and harm's going to come to you. Someone's probably going to slap your hand away or move away from you or be disinterested in talking with you or what have you. You're going to start experiencing all these unwholesome results because the individual is making harmful decisions, causing harm to a living being. So this is wholesome kamma and unwholesome kamma. It's based in either harmless decisions where you're experiencing wholesome kamma, or harmful decisions when you're experiencing unwholesome kamma. Then there's something called old kamma and new kamma. What old kamma is any decisions you made in the past that you're experiencing the results of right now in the present moment. New kamma is any decisions you're making now in the present moment that you're going to experience the results of in the future. So let me give you some examples of this. If I was getting a letter in the mail from the government and it said, hey, we audited your taxes, and 3 years ago there was a mistake on your tax form and you owe us $1,000, and you owe us $1,000 penalty, and you owe us $1,000 interest. You owe us $3,000. And maybe I lied on my tax forms 3 years ago, and that's why there's this error that they found. And this is my unwholesome kamma. I made an unwise decision because I didn't know at that time that I shouldn't be lying. For example, if I didn't understand this natural law, I might have lied 3 years ago, and now I made that decision back then, and now I'm experiencing this old kamma in the present moment. This is old, unwholesome kamma that I am now experiencing. Well, now in the present moment, whatever decisions I make, I'm going to produce new kamma. And you would like it to be wholesome. You would like to extinguish this unwholesome kamma that you've created in the past. But if I don't know these teachings about the Eightfold Path and the Natural Law of Kamma, I might do unwise things here in the present moment. I might create new unwholesome kamma. What I might do when I get that letter, if I don't know these teachings, is I might rip it up and throw it away, thinking I can run and hide from this. Where if you understand the Natural Law of Kamma, you know you can't. Or maybe I call up the government and I'm bitter and harsh and hostile and vindictive with them, resentful. Maybe I write them a nasty letter, right? Having moral conduct that's very unwise. And now I'm producing new unwholesome kamma. And I'm going to have to deal with this in the future, right? So if you know these teachings and you know your goal is to extinguish all your old unwholesome kamma, and you need to produce wholesome kamma in order to do that, then in the present moment, you know the last thing you're interested in doing is ripping up this letter and throwing it away, or being bitter and harsh and hostile with the government. Instead, you might write them a letter, or you might call them up and you might apologize. You say, hey, I'm so sorry for this oversight and this error. I'd really like to make amends here. I'd really like to take care of this, but I'm so sorry. I don't have $3,000, right? And now when you're so polite and kind and friendly with them, they say, hey, you know what? You only need to pay us $1,000. We're going to drop off the penalty. We're going to drop off the interest. Just pay us $1,000 and we can call it even. And you might be like, wow, that's really kind of you. I really appreciate your thoughtfulness and your kindness, but I don't even have $1,000. And now that you're being friendly and kind and warm and gentle with them, they say, hey, I tell you what, how about we work out a payment plan? Over the next 10 months, 12 months, you pay us a little bit each month, and then we can, basically squash this and eliminate this debt. And you're like, sweet, that sounds wonderful, right? So now in the present moment, you've created new wholesome kamma, and you're now extinguishing this old unwholesome kamma that's now coming back to you. Right? So all throughout our life, when we don't have wisdom of these natural laws, we've been making unwise decisions at certain times, and this is going to produce unwholesome results for you. You can't do this, but let's just say you could snap your fingers and instantly practice the teachings of the Buddha perfectly today. you're still going to experience unwholesome karma coming back to you, because in the past, you've made unwise decisions that you now need to experience the results of. So when that is coming back to you, you're going to need to extinguish it. And this is what's going to help you get to the point where you're experiencing more and more wholesome karma. So you use the Eightfold Path to bring your practice up to a point where you can now practice for a consistent long-term period, making wiser and wiser decisions. So now let me go into a little bit more detail about wholesome and unwholesome karma and what's creating this, because this is connected to something we were talking about yesterday. These are the words of the Buddha about what's creating unwholesome karma. Yesterday we talked about the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. This is what's producing all unwholesome karma. When you're making decisions through craving, anger, or ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality, it's going to produce unwholesome karma. So just as a little bit of a refresher, that craving, desire, attachment, that's the longing, the yearning, that's the selfish desires. That when we're making decisions through craving, desire, attachment, when we're longing, yearning, and chasing after things, it's producing unwholesome results for us. And you can look at your life and you can see where that's the case. Maybe you were chasing a job. You were feverishly working for this job. Maybe you were plowing through life. Maybe you weren't really attentive to your job task and responsibilities. Maybe you weren't taking the time to cultivate wholesome relationships. And next thing you know, something unwholesome is happening. And that's coming from the mind's craving. Or maybe you were craving to buy a certain thing and you hurried up and bought this thing without really thinking about it. You spent all this money, and then next thing you know, this product really wasn't that good anyway. And now you experience some unwholesome karma. So whenever you're making decisions through craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, your selfish desires, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. Then whenever you're making decisions through anger, hatred, ill will, and any of those lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, this is going to produce unwholesome results. And you can look at your life once again, and you can see where that's the case. When you've been in relationships and you've been angry and frustrated and bitter, and you've been, maybe your intentions, your speech, and your actions were unskillful, you can see that it produced unwholesome results. Maybe you lost a friend. Maybe a relationship ended. Maybe you lost your job or something like this when you were being bitter and harsh and hostile. When that anger was coming out through your intentions, speech, and actions, it produced unwholesome results for you. And then whenever you make decisions through this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality, the misunderstanding, when you don't understand things like the Eightfold Path or the Four Noble Truths or some of these other very important teachings, whenever you're making decisions with a lack of wisdom, then when you put those decisions into the world, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So this is how unwholesome karma gets created. Essentially, all throughout our life with these pollutions in the mind, it's like putting mud into your garden hose and filling up your garden hose with mud. Then there's wholesome karma. The thing that produces wholesome karma is whenever you make decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, this is what's going to produce wholesome results or wholesome karma. Generosity is the exact opposite of craving, desire, attachment. Craving, desire, attachment is those selfish desires. Generosity is just the opposite. It's giving and sharing with the people around you without any expectation of anything in return. And when you're giving and sharing with the people around you, this is going to produce wholesome results for you, or wholesome karma. Then the opposite of anger, hatred, and ill will, that's the loving kindness, the genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Whenever you're practicing that active goodwill towards all beings, it's going to produce wholesome karma or wholesome results for you. And then when you're making decisions through wisdom, that's the exact opposite of the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. This is going to produce wholesome results for you because you're now making wiser and wiser and wiser decisions. So this is what produces wholesome karma, is generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And you would like to bring that up in your life more and more and more. So what you're doing is you're using the Eightfold Path and all the integrated teachings of the Buddha to gradually decrease your craving, anger, and ignorance. And I gave you some guidance on that throughout the course. And yesterday we talked about it in detail. bringing down your craving, anger, and ignorance. And then you're gradually increasing in your day-to-day life your generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, making more and more decisions through that. So let me pause right here and see if you guys have any questions on the 4 types of Kamma before I teach you how to extinguish your unwholesome Kamma. Do you guys have any questions on this? Yeah, you have some questions? For those of you guys online, you can put your questions in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like.
As far as I understood, we also carry karma from our past lives. Mm-hmm. Is that an explanation why, for example, young kids suffer from like really, bad illnesses, mm-hmm. or, because they are kids, they haven't done anything yet. So that can cause that, for example. Yeah. And for how long we carry this karma from our past lives? And is there any possibility to distinguish whether this karma is from your actions or it's somewhere from the past?
Okay, so I'm going to answer as much of that as I can, and then if there's a piece that I leave out, just let me know. Okay, so if a child has some kind of medical illness early in life, this is their old unwholesome Kamma from their previous life. This body is old unwholesome Kamma when we're first coming into the world, because the egg and the sperm come together, and then there's a mind that comes into that. And that mind, that new mind, didn't make any decisions about this particular egg and sperm, but it's the decisions in the past life that decided where this mind was being reborn. And now when it's reborn into this body, let's just say at 3 years old, they die of cancer or something like this. This is old unwholesome Kamma. And now, having experienced that, where they died at such a short time and in such a young age, they now have extinguished that aspect of that Kamma, and that was the result. It's not punishments and rewards, it's just a cause and effect. And I'm not saying that this is true for every single child, but let's just say somebody was very murderous in their previous life where they did a lot of killing. If they were born into this life, they will have a shorter lifespan. So let's just say somebody was like a tiger or a lion where they were constantly killing in their previous life. Now, when they're reborn into this life, they can experience a shorter lifespan, for example, right? So it gets extinguished through fulfilling it. By experiencing your Kamma, that's how you are able to extinguish it to a certain degree. But I'm going to teach you how to actively extinguish your unwholesome Kamma. The way that we experience Kamma from one life to the next is, let's just say that there's this cardboard box A, and this cardboard box represents the mind, the human mind, right? This cardboard box is a certain size, certain color, certain shape, certain texture, right? And there are certain contents that are in that box. Now, at the end of this life, if there's still contents in the box, meaning craving and residual memories, when this box dissolves, because it's impermanent, this mind dissolves, if there's still contents in that box, it needs to be transferred to a new box. So now there's cardboard box B, but cardboard box B is a completely different cardboard box, different shape, different color, different texture, and so forth. But the contents are from the previous life. So even though we call it the cycle of rebirth, it's actually nothing's being reborn. It's the different mind, a different body, and different mind every single time. It's the craving and residual memories that move from one life to the next. So it's a completely different existence. But an individual's decisions are being motivated through their cravings from their previous life. That's why we call it past life Kamma. So let me give you an example. Let's just say there's someone named Bob that is in the past. And let's just say Bob was very sexually promiscuous, and he was having sex with lots of people. And let's just say he did that all the way through his life. And then he died. And now his mind is going to dissolve. It's impermanent. And those cravings and residual memories from his past life, they're now going to find a new mind. They're going to produce a new mind. And now let's just say this new mind of Susie is created. And now Susie is also very sexually promiscuous because her craving from the previous life is motivating this sexual activity that this individual has. And now let's just say Susie's had several broken relationships, maybe even marriages and things like this. And now let's just say that she ends up contracting a certain disease and ends up dying at the age of 45 as a result of her sexual promiscuity. Well, this is a result of decisions that Susie is making, but it's from cravings from a previous life. So it's old Kamma, but it's making new Kamma in the current life that is now being experienced in that current life. Where Susie, let's just say at the age of 20 or 25 or what have you, could have came in contact with these teachings, learned about craving, desire, attachment, extinguished it, and now she could have lived a different type of life. But because she never got the opportunity to do that, she experienced what she experienced in that particular life. So it's not like there's any black cloud following you around or any kind of being that's orchestrating all of this. It's that inside of each mind, there's craving and residual memories from a previous life that is motivating decisions in this life that now lead to certain results in this life. In terms of whether your Kamma is from a previous life or not, the way that you can be able to see that is if you ever get to a point where you can see your past lives and observe your past lives. Some people experience that, some people don't on their way to enlightenment. If you ever see your past lives and you see what you're doing in your past lives, you can see some of your cravings in your past lives, then you'll understand why you have cravings in this life. There are certain cravings that you have in this life that are coming from your previous lives that never got extinguished. And that's the way that you can see it. That's interesting to be able to see, and it confirms for you what I'm actually telling you. But it really doesn't change anything, because if there's cravings in your mind right now, which if the mind is unenlightened, there is, they need to be extinguished either way, whether they're from the past life or whether they're new cravings that you picked up in this life. It doesn't actually matter. At the end of the day, all cravings need to be extinguished in order to get to enlightenment, and that's what you'd like to focus on. Did you have a follow-up? I saw you grab the mic.
Actually, you've explained everything. Thank you very much. I just, when I grabbed the mic, I was thinking about Susie, that she was lucky enough to be introduced to Buddha's teaching when she was 20 or whatever, yeah. And then like just doing wholesome things. Yeah. She was able to overcome that and just yeah. Replace that somehow.
That would be the ideal thing, right? Because now, she had this mind that has craving or residual memories from Bob, and now if she comes in contact with these teachings, that would be ideal, because now she can have a completely different life. So like my son, he started learning these teachings essentially when he was in the womb because his mom was meditating. And then when he came out as an infant and a toddler, we started doing things to help him learn these teachings. At the age of 6, I started formally teaching him these teachings. He's having a much different life than I had, because I didn't really encounter these teachings until much later in life, and then actually start to actively practice them until much later in life. And my life, my early part was very difficult, very much a struggle, because I didn't have this wisdom. But he's having a completely different life than that. And that's the benefit of him being reborn into a family that understands these teachings. And that was from his past life Kamma. And we sometimes talk about this. We're like, I don't know what you did in your last life, but your mom's practicing these teachings, your dad's practicing these teachings. You've been able to learn them all the way through your childhood. And now if you talk to him, he says that he only experiences annoyment like about once every 3 months. And I can't imagine as a 12, 13-year-old kid just being a little bit annoyed once every 3 months. Like, man, it was like daily that I was sad and angry and frustrated and annoyed and all these kinds of things. So he's having a much different life, but that's his Kamma from his previous life being born into this particular existence. And he doesn't know at this point what he did in the past, but perhaps someday he might see his past lives, who knows? But yeah, when we come in contact with these teachings, it drastically changes what you experience on a day-to-day basis, because now you can train your mind and you can make wiser and wiser decisions, getting to the point where you're experiencing significant wholesome Kamma. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. I think I saw some more. Yeah.
Yeah. I just came up with a question with this. So our cravings are passed on from one life, from the previous life to the other. Are our passions also passed on?
Passion is just another word for craving, desire, attachment. So oftentimes people describe passion as it's a good thing. It's a quality that you would like to have. But when you have passion for something and you chase after that, it'll burn out. This is why somebody can have a relationship with someone and they're like, oh, I have so much passion for this guy or this girl. But then over time it burns out and you're like, not interested in this person anymore. Right? Because the craving has been extinguished and it's been burnt out. Or you might have a passion for a certain hobby or a certain job, and now you pursue that passion, but then eventually it burns out and you're like, not interested in that job anymore, not interested in that hobby or that activity. So passion is just another word for craving, desire, attachment. And you would like to get to the point where you're not making decisions based on your passions, but instead you're making wise decisions about what it is you would like to be doing in this world and gradually walk towards those through wise decision making rather than just following some craving or some passion that you have, because that's not sustainable. You will eventually burn out of that passion, and now you're basically have invested 3, 4, 5, 6 years into a relationship or into a certain job or activity or hobby, and now done, don't want to do it anymore. Right? So you would like to come from the middle and gradually walk towards your goals and objectives, building up this wonderful life for yourself. And that's sustainable, and that can be fulfilling and satisfying all the time. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any other questions anywhere. So I'm going to move on now and help you understand how to extinguish your unwholesome kamma. Because now you're understanding that there's wholesome kamma that is produced through harmless decisions. When you're making decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, these are harmless and they're going to produce wholesome kamma or wholesome results. Then there's unwholesome kamma, which is produced through harmful decisions, when you're making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance. And then there's old kamma, which is decisions you made in the past that you're experiencing the results of now in the present moment. And then there's decisions you're making now in the present moment that's going to produce new kamma. And you would like all your new kamma to be wholesome, of course, right? But you still have these pollutions in your mind that is going to be motivating unskillful decisions and unskillful conduct. So that's why you're gradually bringing down your craving, anger, and ignorance, and gradually increasing your generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And that's what's going to motivate all your wholesome decisions to produce new kamma that is wholesome. So the way that you produce and eliminate the way you produce wholesome kamma and eliminate your unwholesome kamma is by producing only new wholesome kamma. You would like to produce more and more wholesome kamma in the present moment. And you do that through the Eightfold Path. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. The more you practice this in your day-to-day life, in your day-to-day decision-making, it will extinguish all your unwholesome kamma. So for example, that decision that I said where this tax letter is coming back to me saying, hey, you've made this error on your tax form and you have a $3,000 penalty. Well, that was from my unwise decision to lie. That was wrong speech. But now in the present moment, I can use right speech to be able to extinguish this unwholesome kamma by making decisions that are wise using right speech, for example, right intention and right speech. And even we could say right view, because I'm taking responsibility for this issue. And now I have right intention and right speech. And now I have right action to be able to solve this. And that's how you extinguish it, is through the Eightfold Path. An analogy that I can give you is like, let's just think about the decisions that we've made in the past as putting mud in our garden hose. And we've been putting all this mud in our garden hose. Well, now what you're doing on the path to enlightenment by bringing your practice up to the Eightfold Path and practicing that for an extended period of time, it's like taking your garden hose and hooking it up to the faucet. And now you might open up your garden hose, you might open up the faucet. If you just have like a little drip coming through there, you're not going to be able to release all this mud out of this garden hose. Like maybe you're coming to the temple once every 6 months. Maybe you're meditating, once a week or once a month. You've got like a little drip going through this impacted garden hose of mud. You're not going to be able to clean that out in this lifetime. But if you open up that faucet wider and wider and wider, you get more and more clean water coming through there. Maybe you're regularly reading books, you're regularly coming to the temple, you're regularly consulting with a teacher, you're regularly meditating and all these kinds of things, and you're getting your practice up more and more, practicing the Eightfold Path. Well, you've opened up your faucet wider and wider. You got more and more clean water coming through this garden hose. But even when this clean water is going through the garden hose, it's going to spit mud, right? You're going to experience the mud. You can't escape that mud. You're going to need to experience it. So now you've got mud coming out of the end of your garden hose, but you're still putting clean water, meaning wise decisions, into your garden hose. So even though it's spitting mud, every once in a while, you're getting some clean water that's coming out of this garden hose. And now you just keep putting clean water into your garden hose. And now it's going to start spitting mud again. And then it's going to be clean water, clean water, clean water. But then it's going to be some more mud. And then it's going to be clean water, clean water, clean water, clean water. And now it's going to be a little bit more mud. And now it's going to be clean water, clean water, clean water. And eventually you get enough wise decisions into your life, you will clean out this entire garden hose. So the wise decisions are to learn and practice the Eightfold Path really deeply, because this is where you're training your mind to eliminate craving, anger, and ignorance. The meditation and all the other factors on the Eightfold Path is helping you to eliminate craving, anger, and ignorance. Even those 5 precepts that we talked about yesterday, that's to help you eliminate craving, anger, and ignorance. There needs to be a certain amount of craving in your mind to kill, to steal, to have sexual misconduct, to lie, and take substances that cause heedlessness. There needs to be a certain amount of anger and ill will to kill, to steal, to have sexual misconduct, to lie, and take substances that cause heedlessness. And where it's all coming from is the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. But when you transform your decision making, and you're starting to make decisions based on those 5 precepts, for example, you're making wiser and wiser decisions based in generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And now you're putting more and more wise decisions out into the world. So everything the Buddha is teaching you, you might not be aware of it when you're learning it. He's teaching you to extinguish your craving, anger, and ignorance, and increase your generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, so that now you can make wiser and wiser decisions, producing wholesome Kamma. By bringing in more and more wholesome Kamma into your life, you will extinguish all your unwholesome Kamma. But you need to become wise to these teachings and actually practice them, which includes the meditation, because the meditation is decreasing your craving and anger, as well as increasing your generosity, your loving kindness, and your wisdom. So the way that this would look, let's just say in day-to-day life, I'll give you an example now from my own life. In my life, in the past, because of the way I grew up and the experiences that I had, I was a pretty bitter and hostile and harsh person to a certain degree. Of course, I was polite and friendly and respectful in certain situations, but I had a certain amount of bitterness and hostility in my mind. So, when I met my wife many years ago, I think it's been 18 years now, 2007 when we met, I was friendly, I was loving, and I was kind to a certain degree, especially during the honeymoon phase. We were first getting to know each other, right? But then over time, that kind of slowly went away, kind of like what you probably experience in your relationships, where it kind of slowly went away, and then you started being bitter and harsh and hostile. And I started being that way with my wife to a certain degree. Well, then after about 11 years of this, where we were be arguing and festering and fighting and be upset with each other, eventually after about 11 years of this, I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. It's been a really long life, and I've gotten to this point where I'm done with being angry and frustrated and broken relationships over and over and over again. And I started doing work on my own mind. And I started transforming my own mind, actively working to train my mind. And I started to be loving and kind and calm and gentle with my wife. But because I was angry and bitter and harsh in the past, my wife was still being bitter and harsh and hostile to me. So I would come home sometimes and she would just start yelling at me. She'd just be upset with me, right? This was my unwholesome Kamma coming back to me. I just walked into the house. I was completely calm. There was nothing going on in my life, but yet there was this avalanche of anger and hostility coming at me because that's what I used to do to her sometimes, right? But now in the present moment, I was doing something different, where in the past, I would have been angry and bitter and harsh right back to her. Like, what do you mean? Why are you yelling at me? Who do you think you are? Who paid for this house? You know, all these kinds of things, right? I'd be all angry and bitter and harsh and hostile, right? But now, understanding that I needed to extinguish this unwholesome Kamma, I knew the last thing I was interested in doing is putting out bitterness and harshness and hostility, because she was being bitter and harsh and hostile with me. I'm not going to extinguish that by being bitter and harsh and hostile with her. So what I used to do is I just walk away. I just walk away. Where in the past, she would pick up this rubber ball of anger and throw it around the room. I would pick it right back up and throw it around the room too. And next thing you know, there's all this hostility and bitterness in the room. But at the beginning, what I would do is I would just walk away, right? And then slowly but surely, she realized, he's not arguing with me anymore. Right? And then after I got more and more control over my mind, sometimes I would come in and she would be bitter, harsh, and hostile with me. And I would sit there and I would listen to her and I just quietly listen. Sometimes I would close my eyes. And then when she would be done, I would say, "Thank you, dear." And I would why her and I'd walk away. Right? And then I got even more control over my mind. And then she would be bitter, harsh, and hostile with me. And I would be like, "Yeah, you're right. I was a horrible husband. I was so bad. I did all those things that you're talking about. You're right. I did all those things. I was really not a nice person. But how about now? How about now? What have I been doing for the last 1 year at that time, right? What have I been doing for the last 1 year? Have I done any of those things?" She's like, "No." And I was like, "Okay." Right? So now slowly but surely she was seeing like, wow, he's not bitter and harsh and hostile with me anymore. He's not doing any of those things anymore. Slowly but surely she could see she's the one who was angry. Her husband wasn't angry anymore. So slowly but surely she could see if that she was interested in talking with her husband, she was going to need to be calm and gentle. And now 5, 6 years later, 8 years later, there hasn't been any arguments, any frustration, any agitation or anything. But I had to experience for about 1.5 years, I had to experience that bitterness and harshness and hostility. But by me being completely calm and gentle and peaceful and loving, practicing generosity, loving kindness and wisdom, by me practicing that over the 1.5 year time frame, the extinguishing of this unwholesome Kamma was accomplished. That I was practicing all these teachings, and now she's not bitter and harsh and hostile anymore. We have a wonderful relationship, right? So you're going to need to do this in some of your relationships. There's certain relationships you have right now that maybe there's bitterness and harshness and hostility in them, and you're not committed to the relationship. And there's too much hostility on your side. Maybe there's too much on their side. And the best way to solve that is to just walk away. You don't have to go to the person, download all the reasons why you're no longer going to be their friend or whatever it is type of relationship you're in. You can just choose to gradually walk away from the relationship and in the relationship. That's going to extinguish that unwholesome Kamma in that particular relationship. Any kind of painful feelings that you're having as a result, you need to realize walking away from the relationship isn't going to solve those, because you need to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, but it is going to extinguish your unwholesome Kamma in that particular relationship because you're choosing to walk away and no longer allow it to continue. The second type of relationship you might have is people like my wife or my mom, where there was some problems in the relationship and I was more committed to this relationship though, and I was interested in improving it. So I needed to work on my mind first, and then I could be better in those relationships. So you might have relationships like that. Maybe with your life partner, your children, your parents, your siblings, people like this, that you're more committed to the relationship. Yeah, there's some problems in it. And the way that you're going to solve that is first work on your own mind. And now when you're back in the relationship, now you can be better. But then there's a third category of relationships. The third category is brand new people that you've never even met yet. You don't even know their names. You don't even know who they are. But now when you meet those people, you'll only ever be loving and kind, practicing these teachings of the Eightfold Path. And now, because you're only ever loving and kind in those relationships, that's what you're going to experience coming back to you. So this is how you clean up your relationships and clean up your unwholesome karma, is you need to eliminate certain relationships by just walking away. You need to improve the condition of your mind, and there you can be better in those relationships. You'll experience improved results in the relationships you're more committed to. Then there's this third category of relationships, brand new people that you've never even met yet. Some of these people here, maybe that you already are spending time with, that you're only ever loving and kind with these people. And that's what you're going to experience coming back to you. And now eventually you'll get to the point where all your relationships are harmonious, that you don't have hostility and bitterness and argumentative speech and hostility and aggression and all these kinds of things in your relationships. Because if you continue to do those things, that's what you're going to continue to experience coming back to you. You would like to extinguish your hostility, your aggression, your bitterness, and now that's what will extinguish it in your relationships. Sometimes people think the way to get somebody to do the things that you want them to do is to be aggressive and hostile and bitter with them. But if you do that, it's just going to keep coming back to you. So if you're interested in getting to harmonious relationships where everybody's treating you loving and kind, you're going to have to start that for yourself. You can't go around and teach mom and teach other people to do things your way. You're going to have to change first. This is one of the things that I didn't understand early on in life, is I kept trying to change other people. I kept trying to change my mom so much, but it just never worked. The way that it works is you got to change your own mind. When you change your own mind and you transform your own mind and you start being more loving and kind in your relationships, that's what's going to transform those relationships, by first transforming your mind. And it's the teachings of the Buddha that are going to help you to do that. So you can bring your practice up to the Eightfold Path, studying that with the original words of the Buddha. You're going to need to commit that to your memory. So if you learned it here in this program with me, great, but you're going to need to study it outside of this class. And if you haven't learned it, it's okay, because it's in the books, it's in the audiobooks, it's in the videos. I teach it many times a month where you can learn it. And now once you learn it, you're going to need to relearn it multiple times. You're going to need to study it in detail so you commit it to your memory. And now once you get your practice up and running on the Eightfold Path, you're going to need to do that for an extended period of time, multiple years. This path to enlightenment isn't 1 week, it's not 1 month, it's not 1 year. It's a multiple year journey, but it's a permanent solution that once you get your mind up to that point where it's actually enlightened, you will never experience any difficulties or struggles ever again, because your mind's fully awake to these natural laws and life is at ease, and you can make whatever decisions that you'd like to make because you fully are wise to these natural laws, and any decision you make is wise, so therefore you're experiencing wholesome results coming back to you. So this is how you clean up your unwholesome karma, is through the Eightfold Path and practicing that more and more and more and more, bringing down your craving, anger, and ignorance through the training of the mind, and bringing up your generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So do you guys have any questions on extinguishing your unwholesome karma? No questions here? Okay. So let me talk about this topic. Sometimes when I talk about the natural law of Kamma, I've had students say, hold on a second, David, you and the Buddha are saying that you can't run and hide from your karma. What about that person who murdered that individual? Their bloody footprint was at the murder scene. The bloody murder weapon was under their bed. Their car was all full of blood, and they went to court and they were found not guilty. Didn't they escape their karma? Didn't they run and hide from it? The answer is no, they didn't. What you're looking at in that situation is the laws of society. In the laws of society, a court of law is imperfect. That's not your entire karma. It's imperfect and it's prone to have errors and mistakes. So if someone goes to a court of law and they're truly guilty, but they're found not guilty, that's because it's a human law. That's because human beings are involved and we're prone to errors and mistakes. There's never going to be a time in history where laws have been applied equally and fairly to all people. It's always wise to aspire for that to occur more and more, and that we should get better and better at that. But because human beings have craving, anger, and ignorance in their mind, they're making unwise decisions to a certain degree. So the laws of society are always going to be imperfect because they're created by human beings and administered by human beings. But even so, that individual hasn't escaped their Kamma. They're still experiencing the unwholesome results of their decision to kill. You just might not be looking at it. You might just be looking at, did they go to jail or not? That's not their Kamma 100%. That's a part of their Kamma, but it's not 100% of their Kamma. So using this example of someone who truly murdered someone, their bloody footprint was at the murder scene, the bloody murder weapon was in their bed, their car was full of blood, and they were found not guilty, they're still experiencing their Kamma. Here's the things that they will experience, even though they got off from the human laws and the laws of society, which isn't necessarily the natural law of Kamma, that's the laws of society that are imperfect, they're still experiencing these things. They're going to experience a bad reputation in the community, right? Because this is going to be all over the news, and more people are going to learn that this person has potentially murdered. You can experience sickness, disease, physical and mental pain, shorter lifespan. The way that this happens is that if you have enough anger and hostility in your mind to go out and kill another human being, that is causing a significant amount of stress and anxiety within your mind. And now that puts pressure on the body, that the body can't sustain life long term when you have that level of stress and anxiety in your mind. So you can experience a significant amount of sickness and illness and disease, physical and mental pain, and a shorter lifespan because of that. Then that individual can have hostility, aggression, fights, and even be killed by other people. Because again, if you have enough anger and hostility in your mind to go out and kill another human being, it's not like all the rest of your relationships are going wonderfully. It's not like you have all these harmonious relationships and there's just this one person you decided to go out and kill, right? That's not the way it is. You're making unwise decisions in all parts of your life, and it's gotten so bad that you have so much craving, anger, and ignorance that you've decided to kill. So that means all these other relationships in your life, they're difficult and problematic as well. And you're experiencing all kinds of hostility, aggression, fights, and you can even be killed yourself in any of those other relationships. You can notice that individuals like this will have a loss of income and a loss of wealth, because to go away to a court of law and defend yourself on a murder charge, that's a significant amount of money that you're going to have to spend in order to be able to go and defend yourself on something like that. So even if they were found not guilty, they had a significant reduction of income and wealth. Then they're going to have difficulties in their relationships. Like I said, there's going to be multiple relationships that they're having difficulties in. They're just having problem after problem after problem. They're going to have difficulty securing and progressing in their employment, right? There's not very many people that are going to be interested in hiring this person who everybody pretty much knows has killed and has murdered. They're going to have difficulty securing housing. Are you interested in being a roommate with somebody who's been all over the news for murder, right? Are you interested in renting this person your house, right? Are you interested in these kinds of things? This person's going to have a challenge to find housing. This is part of their unwholesome Kamma. Then they're going to have challenges acquiring the basic necessities to sustain life because of their loss of income and their loss of wealth. And then ultimately, discontentedness itself, fear and guilt and shame that is in the mind, that's something that individual is going to have to deal with on a long-term basis. And then ultimately there's rebirth. If this individual's mind continues to function like this and they die, they can be reborn into various realms that would be very problematic for this individual. So this is an individual's Kamma who's chosen to murder. It's not just whether you go to jail or not. So if you're watching TV and you see some news event and you just know this person's guilty, but they went to court and found not guilty, you don't need to be upset about that. You don't need to be angry. They're going to experience their Kamma, and they are experiencing their Kamma as a result of that decision that they made to kill or whatever else it is. You can also see the other side of this too. Sometimes people can go to court and they can be found guilty when in reality they were actually not guilty, right? Let's just say, for example, that I was in a gang growing up as a kid, and now at the age of 25, I decided to get out of the gang. But all throughout my teenage years and my early adulthood, I was running around with this gang, selling drugs, murdering, doing different things, but I never got caught for any of these things. At the age of 25, maybe I got out of the gang. And now 26, 27 years old, I'm kind of putting together my life, trying to make life better. But now let's just say the gang goes out and does some kind of murder or something like that, and I wasn't even there. but it gets pinned on me, right? And now I end up going to court, and by way of the certain evidence that was presented, I get found guilty of this crime, even though I wasn't even there, and I've been away from this gang for a year or two. Well, this is my unwholesome karma, that all those murders and all that drug dealing that I did earlier in life that I never got caught for, I never got caught for those things, and I didn't go to jail for that, but now here's something that I didn't even do, and I'm going to jail for it. Right? So you can have this side of it that's happening too. And this is an individual's karma, the results of their decisions of what they decided to do earlier in life. Now they're experiencing this unwholesome karma as a result. So you can't run and hide from the karma. And the more you understand about this natural law, you can make wiser and wiser decisions to experience more and more wholesome results. But the laws of society, they are not 100% the natural law of Kamma. They are laws of society, and they're going to be imperfect. But you can be assured that the natural law of Kamma is always working, and people are going to experience the results of their decisions. You might not be there when it's occurring, but they're going to experience the results of what they decide. You can't run and hide from it. So do you guys have any questions on this? Yeah. If you guys could get mics and ask questions. Yeah. I'm not sure who's first or second. You guys can decide.
I'm not sure whether it's really connected, but I have this question since I got to Thailand, because in some temples I saw that, for example, a person donated a huge amount of money, and they have like a picture of this person and like the whole story that this person donated and all these kind of things. Is it really Dhamma that a person wants recognition for doing something good? And I know that I mean, I've met people in Thailand here who, for example, give food to monks in the morning because they don't want to be reborn again. Is it like, you know, it seems to me like these things come not truly from the heart, but like from another place, like, let me do this in order to get this. I think when you give without like expecting anything in return, not a picture, not your name anywhere, that's how you create it. Is it the right?
Yeah, so what you were describing at the beginning, that's not what the Buddha taught, but I'm going to teach you what the Buddha talks about on this particular topic. Our next talk about what is merit, I'll help you to understand this, because there's some things to be able to understand about that. Yeah. And then you can bring this back up, because there's some things that I can talk about in detail to help you understand further. Yeah.
Yeah. Would it be wise of you to just go to the tax office and say, yeah, 2 years ago I didn't pay, instead of waiting for it to come back to you?
Yeah, you can do that too. Like you can proactively go and extinguish these things. If you know that you've done some unwise things in the past, that's a way that you can proactively go out and extinguish your unwholesome karma. So one time, I'll tell you guys a story so you know, understand that I've done many unwise things in my life. When I was in my early 20s, I bought a 4x4 Jeep, and I was, of course, obviously very attached to it. And one time I went to a friend's house and I parked it, and I went into their apartment and we spent time hanging out and stuff. And when I came out, it was gone. A tow truck had come and taken it, and the whole parking lot was empty. But I apparently parked in an area I wasn't supposed to park in, and they took my Jeep. When the tow truck was actually in the parking lot, I saw it. They could have easily said, hey, sir, you know, can you park over here? You're not allowed to park there. But of course, they wanted to make the money, so they just let me park wherever I parked, and then they swooped in and took my Jeep. So when I came out a couple hours later, it was gone. So I found out where they took it, because they have a sign in the parking lot where they take it. And I went there. And when I went there, there was nobody there to help me so I could pay and be able to get my Jeep back. So I jumped over the fence. I put it in 4-wheel drive, and I plowed through the fence and like ripped a whole fence down and, damaged the whole thing. And then I went to my house and went to sleep. And then about an hour later, I had some police officers at my door knocking on the door because, of course, they had my license plate and everything. And then I lied my way through it. I hired a lawyer and all this kind of stuff. And because they were pressing criminal charges, the criminal charges got dropped. It went to civil court. They had a civil judgment. It was like $2,000 civil judgment that I owed these people $2,000. And I asked my lawyer, I was like, what's going on with this? Like, what do I have to do with it? He's like, you know what, David, to tell you the truth, you don't even have to pay it. He's like, I got a whole drawer full of these things. He said, they're never going to come and collect that money from you. And I said, oh, okay, great. So basically it went away. And maybe 10 years later, I knew that this thing was always out there, and I had transformed some of what I was doing. I was no longer doing those kinds of things. And I called up the owner of the business and I apologized for what I had done. And I let them know that I would like to make amends for this situation. And I said, I know that it cost you about $1,000 to repair your fence, and I would like to pay you that $1,000. And he said, okay, that sounds good. So we worked it out where I paid him this $1,000. So you can do that. You can proactively do those kinds of things, and it will help you to extinguish your Kamma. Because if that kind of stuff is out there, it's a unwholesome Kamma that you haven't dealt with yet. So the Thai people take this so far. I can tell you guys this, that when you buy a house in Thailand, they have you buy life insurance along with it, so that if you die while that loan is in place, that the life insurance pays off your house. Because the way that they think about it is that if you have a debt and you die, that means you're going to have to be reborn because you never paid off that debt. So they will have life insurance so it pays off your debt, so that basically you don't have that unwholesome Kamma to deal with, where you're having to come back into the world. Because if you have any unwholesome Kamma, you have to experience it either in this life or some future life. So the Thai people built into their housing market, and I'm sure it helps them for business as well, to sell some life insurance along with their loans, that you have this life insurance that if at 25 years, the life of this loan, if you die at any point, your house gets paid off automatically from the life insurance. That's how far they've taken this, to be able to ensure that someone doesn't have any debts at the time of death. Mm-hmm. You have some questions? I don't think your mic's on. People online won't be able to hear you. There it is.
Great. Mm-hmm. About the Kamma. So actually, not a lot, but there are persons doing the bad things and they're not paying the price. My question is it possible that if I'm doing a bad thing, but I'm doing a good thing for my kids, for other people, it's actually doing the action of reduce it? Because in my life or experience of others, so it's not actually the law of life.
Yeah, so if someone's doing something unwise, they are experiencing the results of that. You just might not be there to see it, and you might not be able to identify clearly enough, because right now at this point you don't fully understand the natural law of Kamma. So you might be looking at the situation thinking that they're not experiencing the results of their decisions, but they surely are. You're just not there to be able to see it, because you can't see somebody else's Kamma 100% because you're not in their life 100%. You're not with them for every decision that they make, and you're not with them for every result of what they're experiencing in their day-to-day life. So you can't see someone else's Kamma 100%. So they are definitely experiencing their unwholesome Kamma. You can't run, you can't escape it. In terms of extinguishing your unwholesome Kamma, if you're producing unwholesome Kamma over here and you're producing wholesome Kamma over here, something completely different, that's not extinguishing your unwholesome Kamma over here. You still have to experience this. You can't just say like steal money and then go over here and give it away to the poor people, and then that's going to extinguish your Kamma. You still have to experience the stealing of this money. Like if you went out to a bank and you robbed a bank and you went and gave that money away to poor people, you're still going to jail. You're still going to get caught. You're still going to experience the unwholesome results of that. You can't, do away with your unwholesome Kamma by producing some kind of wholesome Kamma over here. That's not the way it works. You're going to need to experience that unwholesome Kamma of having robbed the bank, whether it's go to jail or what have you, and now you're extinguishing that unwholesome Kamma through experiencing that. And now when you get out of jail, you're wiser that, hey, if I would like to give money to the poor people, I need to go out and make that money or get donations or something like this, and then I can give the money away to the poor people. I can't steal and give away. That's not going to produce wholesome results for you. It's still on, actually. You just turned it off.
That I'm living with them actually believe that if they're doing something wrong, so if they donate or they tambun padsong alay golayang, they will be like renew. I mean, people that doing drugs, crimes, and everything actually believe that when I'm collecting the money to build a new what in the village, a new hospital in the village, they actually believe that every death will be like not a new reborn. It's something that will cut from them Kamma. It will make them a good future. They actually believe in it.
That's the problem with belief. And that's the problem with the misunderstandings of the teachings, is that you can believe anything you like, but true reality of what actually is happening is going to be very different. So what I'm teaching you is what the Buddha taught and what is true reality, so you can see the truth for yourself. And that's why I give you examples that stealing from a bank and giving it away to poor people, you still got to experience your unwholesome Kamma. And you can see that very clearly. So while other people might believe whatever they believe, and belief, you don't know what's true or false, you're just believing it. None of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief. You got to see the truth for yourself that, yeah, you're right, David. You can't produce unwholesome Kamma, making unwise decisions, and then wash that away by doing something like giving money away to poor people. It's just not possible, and you can see it. You can see it for yourself. So what other people believe, or whatever people think, or what other misunderstandings people have, that's on them. But what you're doing here is you're building up your practice. You're building up your wisdom. You're awakening your mind to be able to see true reality. And getting to this higher consciousness where your mind is awake to these natural laws, you're going to understand things differently than what other people understand. And that's okay. Right? That's okay, because they're the ones who are experiencing what they're experiencing, but this path is about you learning and growing and developing. So just because a Thai person or 3, 4, 5, 10, however many you've been in contact with that think that way, that's what they think, but you can see the truth.
Of course.
Hold on. You can see the truth through studying the original teachings, and then not believing that, learning, examining, investigating, then reflecting to independently verify.
With everyone.
Independently verify. Hold on. Don't have a craving to talk. Proper time, right? So then independently verifying and then practicing. When you practice the teachings, that's what's going to produce the wholesome results for you. Now you can see the truth of what's actually true reality.
Yes.
So, okay, now you talk.
No problem. I mean, I'm only sharing with you the way of thinking. That's it. I'm sharing with you. Not thinking like this. I'm sharing with you.
Yeah, I already know how Thai people think. I already know how the world thinks. You don't have to teach me anything or tell me anything about this.
I'm not teaching you anything.
So usually when people pick up a microphone, they're asking questions. So if you have questions, I'll help you. Right? I'll answer your questions for you. But if you're just sharing what you see in the world with Thai people, you don't need to share that with me, because I already know. I've been around Thai people many years, and other people too. There's many misunderstandings in the world, and this is why you see so much difficulties and struggles in the world, throughout the world. But what this path is about is helping you get to wisdom so that you can see the truth. So it's great that you've seen those things and you've been exposed to those things, because you know what people think. But now you can see the truth of what is true reality. And that's what's going to lead to you cultivating wisdom and awakening to be able to now make wise decisions yourself. Okay, so this is everything on this particular topic. What I'm going to do is take a break here. It's about 10 minutes to 11, and then we'll take a 20-minute break and come back at 10 minutes after 11. And that's where I'm going to teach these next two topics of what is merit and continued support on the path to enlightenment. And some of this gift giving and some of the beliefs that you guys are talking about, this is what we'll talk about in here as well. So you guys can see true reality around this topic. So enjoy your break, and I'll see you guys in about 20 minutes. Okay?